I've recently noticed strange things in my apartment. It started with food mysteriously disappearing from my fridge and cupboards while I was at work. It didn't really bother me at the time, since my eating habits were terrible because of my busy schedule. But it didn't stop there. Almost every night, I felt like I could hear movement noises inside the walls. And sometimes, when I came home late from work, I would find my computer and my television turned on, even though I was sure I'd turned them off before leaving. Oddly, the television was always tuned to local news. And in my internet history, there were several links to restaurants that delivered near my place. In other words, I was just as intrigued as I was scared. The building I lived in had a very strong security service. Police officers frequently patrolled the area, and this part of the city was known to be perfectly safe. I had given a spare set of my keys to two of my friends to make sure that if I ever lost mine, I wouldn't end up in a difficult situation. So I thought that one of them was probably trying to play a prank on me. I really wanted to get to the bottom of the story, so I asked them directly if they had anything to do with it. However, they both firmly denied having anything to do with it. Of course, that made me even more stressed, so I asked the landlord to check the security cameras for any suspicious activity on my floor. She immediately started her investigation by watching the last 2 weeks of footage to try to find any suspicious activity. But after a week, she told me she hadn't found anything out of the ordinary. Given all the overtime I was doing, I figured she was probably right. Since I was a lawyer handling domestic violence cases, I sometimes felt overwhelmed by the horror of the files I was dealing with. For several weeks, I ran on coffee and migraines became part of my routine. One day, in the middle of winter, I got sick and had to take a few days off. Though I was annoyed to waste my days off, I was still glad to have some time for myself. It was around 7:30 post-meridium, and I was already starting to feel tired, so I decided to go get some medicine. And as I was coming back to my apartment, which was on the 6th floor, ready to spend a long night of peace and relaxation, I heard a faint noise as I got out of the elevator. I looked around the hallway, but there was no one there. Suddenly, I heard quick footsteps, as if someone had just run across a wooden surface. I listened carefully, and with fear, I realized where the sounds were coming from, not from inside my apartment. It couldn't have been a friend, since I changed the locks for reassurance after everything that happened. I felt chills run all over my body. Because I knew I was right, and that meant an intruder had broken into my house. It made my stomach turn. I considered running downstairs quickly to call for help, but knew the intruder might escape if I did. So I took a deep breath and slowly opened the door. I was instantly overwhelmed by a nauseating smell that made me want to vomit. It smelled like something had rotted in my house. For a moment, I ignored the smell and cautiously went to the kitchen. To grab the rifle I kept hidden in one of the drawers, I took it in my hand, then I turned on the light. To my great surprise, the first thing I noticed was several pizza boxes and delivery bags scattered all over the tile floor. That was impossible because I knew I hadn't ordered any food that day. Looking more closely, I noticed that the person, who was probably responsible for all this, had stepped in the food on the floor and left footprints leading to the living room. There was no longer any doubt about it. Someone had entered my apartment and quickly hid upon hearing me arrive. I crept toward the living room, rifle ready. The footprints led to the wall on the other side of the room, and at that spot there were several wooden planks lying on the floor. Cautiously, I made my way toward the wall. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst from my chest. I stopped a few meters from a hole I'd never noticed before, likely hidden by the boards and just discovered. From where I was, I couldn't see anything inside, so I moved my head closer and peered into the darkness. Looking for a sign of life? Even so, I still couldn't see anything because of the darkness. So I took out my phone and turned on my screen. Suddenly I saw two red eyes staring at me. I was so scared that I jumped back, trying not to fall. A wave of adrenaline immediately rushed through my body, and in the most intimidating tone possible, I shouted, "If you don't get out of here right now, I swear I'll blow your brains out." A heavy silence fell. I almost expected a madman to come out of the hole and jump on me, so I kept my finger firmly on the trigger. "Did you hear me? This is your final warning." Before I could finish my sentence, I was interrupted by faint sobbing coming from the wall. The intruder then took a deep breath before speaking.
"Please don't hurt me. I'm sorry for what I did."
The voice sounded like a scared young girl. This wasn't what I expected. I immediately lowered my rifle as the tension that had built up in the room turned into pure confusion. "You almost gave me a heart attack," and I said, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" I didn't get any answer. She was probably too shocked to say anything. "You can trust me. I promise I won't hurt you." I slowly backed away to show her that I wasn't a threat. You see, after a short moment of silence, she started talking again.
"My name is Prisca,"
she said in a trembling voice.
"I didn't want to cause any trouble. I just wanted to get as far away from my parents as possible."
Prisca. I stopped talking for a minute, trying to remember where I had heard that name before, and then it clicked. Prisca was the young girl who went missing near my home a few weeks earlier. The media asked for witnesses to help locate her. After she ran away from home and her parents physically abused her on Christmas Eve, and as luck would have it, that day I had gone out to party and forgot to lock my front door. At that moment, I was overwhelmed by a wave of compassion because I had met many children like her in my work. The poor little girl must have been completely terrified. I thought to myself that when she ran out of food, she probably tried to leave my place to find something to eat in the other apartments on the floor, and that she had dropped everything on the floor. Hearing myself arrive, I recalled seeing a police car parked farther up my street after returning from the pharmacy. And I told myself that I needed to reassure her first, before going down to get them. "It's going to be okay, little one. Everything will be fine," I reassured her. "Come on, get out of there, and we'll make sure everything goes well." And she suddenly stopped sobbing and became perfectly silent. As I waited for her response, I started to feel really uncomfortable, and after a long minute, she finally said something like, "Okay."
"Okay, but can you put down your weapon to help me get out of here?"
His voice was deeper this time. This change unsettled me. Of course I wanted to help him, but there was something strange and I had a bad feeling. I didn't know why, but my instinct told me it would be better to leave her there while I went to get help. Well, you know what? Wait here, Prisca. I'll be back with help." "No, wait," she interrupted me in a loud and desperate voice. Her cry gave me chills.
"You can't leave me here. My ankle, it really hurts. I think I hurt myself when I slipped while running. I don't think I'll be able to get out on my own. You have to help me now. I'm scared alone here."
I hesitated for a moment. Normally, I wouldn't have hesitated for a second to help her. But something in the tone of her voice made me feel like she wasn't telling the whole truth. And since my intuition had never let me down, I decided to trust it. "It'll only take a few minutes. Wait for her, kid." "Okay, I promise I won't be long." I hurried out of my apartment before she could say another word. I sprinted down the stairs and ran to the police car. Relieved, I saw 2 police officers talking there. But just as I was about to knock on the window, I froze. I remembered something that even now chills me to the bone. I can't believe it took my brain so long to remember that information. It couldn't have been the little girl who had disappeared a few weeks earlier. Because last night, while watching the news, I heard that she had been found dead a few blocks from my house. Her lifeless body had been found hidden inside the walls of a vacant apartment. And even this morning, that's all they talked about on the news. Petrified, I stood there wondering who might be hiding in my house. I called out to the 2 officers to tell them everything. Despite my panicked state, at first they didn't seem to believe me, and after a few minutes, I finally managed to convince them to follow me. Without catching my breath, I ran with them to my apartment. Once in my living room, I pointed out to them where the intruder was hiding. One of the officers asked me to step back, while both of them drew their weapons and pointed them at the wall.
It's the police. I want you to come out of here now and put your hands on your head.
But the officer's requests went unanswered.
You have 5 seconds to comply or I'll come drag you out by force. Get out of that hole.
Still nothing. The officers then exchanged a look and a few nods. One of them approached the hole in the wall, drawing his flashlight while keeping his gun pointed ahead. I watched anxiously as he stuck his head inside the hole. His colleague then asked if he saw anything. No.
There's nothing inside, but someone was definitely hiding there.
He didn't finish his sentence and leaned in closer.
Wait, I think I see something.
Hearing the surprise in his voice, I realized he had discovered something disturbing. The officer then turned around with a shocked expression on his face. I think there are bodies inside. Those few words were enough to terrify me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. His colleague moved closer to hear him better. My God.
There are a bunch of corpses down there. I've never seen anything like this in my life. These bodies look mutilated. Damn, what happened here?
Just the thought that I was standing a few meters away from several corpses made my stomach turn, and the smell of rot, which I had ignored until then, made me feel really nauseous. I immediately knew that, no matter what had been hiding in the wall all this time, it was not a little girl at all.
One of them might still be alive.
After putting away their weapons, the two officers set about removing the rest of the boards to get better access. I watched them in disbelief. As officers removed the slats, blood beaded on the wall and soon dripped onto the floor. I threw up on the floor near them as they kept removing the boards. Then, without warning, several bodies fell at the officers' feet all at once. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. There couldn't be any survivors left. Given the condition the bodies were in, it looked like their flesh had been violently bitten and their mutilated faces were unrecognizable. Thinking about the pain they must have felt made me even sicker. I thought it was impossible for me to be more disturbed than I already was before I saw the kind of clothes he was wearing. Although their clothes were hard to describe due to being torn and bloody, they were all delivery workers from nearby restaurants. I couldn't look any longer, so I turned away. And that's when I saw that something had been written on one of the boards, with what looked like blood. At first I couldn't really see what was written, so I picked up the board and chills ran through my whole body. On it was written, "You were lucky this time."